A very dark day on Monday, obviously, when a gunman opened fire in Montreal, killing a police officer. A citizen was killed in the chaos before a gunman was neutralized. And the tragedy all stems back to right here in Lethbridge, unfortunately. To help us delve through this is Western Standard Chief Editor Dave Naylor, who is joining us from Calgary. Dave, welcome back. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Jeanette.
Thank you. So, Dave, normally when we hear about these sorts of things, it's happening in the United States, not Canada.
Yeah, it was shocking news to and to actually watch it almost live on Twitter as the feeds came in of police officers rushing in, and it all stemmed from this young confused kid from Lethbridge, Seth Hatfield. He was obviously in a dark place. He hated the world. He hated Jews. He hated women. And he really hated porn. So in some cases, you would call him an incel, I guess. But not much really known about him. He went to the University of Lethbridge and was on the dean's list. So obviously a bright kid. His friends say he became a bit of a loner, and then somehow entered this dark world of the dark web that he was. So, if you do what he did, you've obviously got some sort of mental illness, I think. So he got to some deep, dark point where he somehow got himself to Montreal, dressed up in camo and armed with an SKS rifle. My sources in Montreal say that he actually phoned the cops to report a shooting to get them heading his way, almost like an ambush. And when the police arrived, there was a gun battle. One officer was killed, Constable Ben Renova. He was shot by Hatfield. Another citizen was sort of caught in the crossfire, and as he was trying to try and get away, he was shot and killed by a policewoman who was hiding from the fire. Taking cover, I don't want to say hiding, but taking cover on the fire behind a planter. And as this poor man, Michael Mizrahi, he's a local Jewish rabbi, as he moved into Hatfield, or sort of the policewoman's view, she thought he was the gunman and opened fire and tragically killed him. So, at the end of the day, you've got a gunman dead, you've got a police officer dead, you've got a female police officer wounded, and you've got a rabbi killed by a police officer in the fog of war, I guess, as they call it. So just a terrible tragedy caused by this confused young Alberta man. It was outside the offices of Pornhub, and he was specifically angry at porn in his manifesto. But that said, he never made any attempt to get into the building, and it all seemed to be centered outside the building. But just an absolutely tragic day in Montreal.
Yeah, it's interesting, a kid from Lethbridge to travel all that way and then call the police to sort of ambush them. I don't know. I mean, the situation could have been so much worse, but it was tragic nonetheless, especially to, as you said, see it unfold. And there's so many videos out there on X of it.
And he could have picked a school. He could have picked a playground.
Yeah.
But for some reason, he picked this not very busy street in Montreal, and thank goodness for that, Jeanette.
Yeah, no, exactly. Obviously, the investigation is still unraveling in terms of the bystander being shot. And of course, we all saw him sort of approach the police officer and literally was standing over her. She was startled and I thought he was the gunman. I thought he was one of the gunmen as well. I didn't actually know what was happening when he was shot. And of course, that will all be coming out. But maybe a note would be if you happen to find yourself in these situations, just get down, take cover. Don't ever approach a police officer that's engaged
Exactly.
in
I have so
open
much
fire.
I have so much sympathy for that policewoman. If the same thing happened, I probably would have done the same. And of course, it led to an outburst on Twitter by the usual idiots that we shouldn't have women police officers because they can't handle it. Well, that's just garbage,
no.
obviously. So.
Oh, I think there would have been the same outcome no matter who that police officer would have been. You don't approach a police officer who is engaged in an active shooter situation. But that's not to put blame on the bystander. We actually don't know exactly what was happening. Maybe somebody was calling him over. We don't know. So that will all come out exactly. And, ironically, Montreal, Dave, was also the scene of one of Canada's worst mass shootings at the École Polytechnique back in the 80s involving a gunman who had a vendetta also against women. So what have the politicians said about this whole situation?
Yeah, gun control in Montreal is a very, very hot topic. Has been ever since École Polytechnique. A lot of the nation's gun legislation people are from Montreal. Families of the École Polytechnique, are always behind the push to have more gun laws. The mayor of Montreal came out the very next day and called for tougher gun control laws. And Mark Carney, when he was asked by our Western Standard reporter in Ottawa today, also talked about gun control, didn't say much. But the interesting thing here, Jeanette, is the weapon that was used, the SKS rifle. When the Liberals came out a couple of years ago and brought out their gun ban, the SKS was initially on the list of banned guns. But there was such a pushback by the Indigenous communities because they use them for hunting. It is the most popular weapon to be used for Indigenous hunters. So the Liberals quickly shifted the SKS back into the legal to own section of their law. So, I mean, you can talk about gun control all you want, but this kid had a legal firearm. We don't know anything about in terms of whether the gun was legal or if it was registered or anything like that. Canadian authorities are always very slow to release that information. We would have had it within hours if it was in the States. But right now what we know is the gunman used a legal gun.
Interesting. Yeah, and I guess the question is how did he attain it? But I mean, like you said, it was legal. So
it was legal. You know, I know a lot of people on farms around the area, and they've all got SKSs too.
Oh, that's scary. I mean, looking at it from afar, that was a very long gun. It was terrifying looking.
Yeah, then there is pictures of him standing in a field holding the exact same gun. Okay. There were close-up pictures of the gun laying on the pavement in Montreal, and it looks to match the one he's holding standing in a field.
Oh boy. Okay, well, let's move on to a completely different situation here, or a different topic. It's summertime. That means summer festival season, and usually that's good news. It just seems that lately the summer festival topic has kind of had some controversy swirling around it. So, we're looking at the Calgary Stampede, which kicks off next Friday, and there's been a lot of talk of that this week. It's going to be a little bit quieter this year, isn't it, Dave?
It is, and we've got a lot of people with their knickers in a knot this week. It all started out when the city brought in some new noise regulations that turned down the volume on some of these Stampede tents. And just to be clear, these are not tents on the Stampede grounds. These are tents. One of them, the Cowboys one, is in Millennium Park on the far western edges of downtown, and there's another one along 9th Avenue and about 8th Street within earshot of our building. And I can tell you that we hear them very, very clearly. So they've been told that they have to turn down the volume. They're not happy about it. Paul Vickers of Cowboys was out quickly saying it's going to be an economic catastrophe and people are going to lose their livelihoods. And then the politicians jumped in, as politicians tend to do. Premier Danielle Smith called, city that fun forgot and the fun police, and urged Mayor Farkas to turn back the regulations. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre also seemed it was fit enough to jump into the waters and say, "Come on, we're having a party here, turn it up." But the Mayor Farkas, and it all seemed to be divided along conservatives versus the progressive side. And Mayor Farkas held his, to his credit, held his fire, and said, it's going ahead. Sorry, tough luck. So the people around these big tents may get a little bit more sleep. Who knows? But interestingly, just yesterday, Country Thunder, a huge country music event in Calgary, which was scheduled to be held at Fort Calgary. I refuse to call it the new name, the Confluence. That's just silly. It's at Fort Calgary. And they suddenly got up and canceled. It was to happen this weekend. And they named two reasons. One was construction in the area for the East Village Event Center made getting to the site just too difficult for people. But then they did come out and say the new noise bylaws make the show untenable. So that was a bit of a kick in the guts for country music people.
Oh, especially
it's supposed to kick off the Stampede, and that's where country music lives.
And 2 days, just 2 days before the event.
Days. So, Mayor Farkas was blindsided by this. He read about it in the media, and he quickly, stepped forward.
He's never one to hold back, is he?
No, and good for him.
Words.
Good for him. He picks a side and he sticks with it, whether he's right or wrong.
Right.
But again, you also got to realize that it's not just the noise from these tents; it's the aftermath. When they shut down at 2:00, then you've got hundreds and hundreds of extremely drunk people walking in the neighborhoods, throwing up and urinating, and it just becomes a major mess for the people. I think there's about 9,000 families in the area. So it's not only a music loudness thing; it's a social disorder thing that goes along the side.
Right, and I would say possibly that's not the Stampede's fault. It's not that we're not putting fault on the Stampede necessarily, but maybe that's the time to have more police force right on the roads there, moving people along quickly and quietly. And we already know that the Calgary police are stretched thin during that time. It's all hands on deck. So
and they're actually bringing in sheriffs from across the province that are going to help patrol these tents. But come on, Jeanette, you and I know when we were drunk, you used to go to these places to get drunk and have fun with your friends. And that's what the Stampede was all about.
Yeah, the Stampede's always a good time.
It's always a good time. There's not a lot of places to drink on the grounds, apart from the beer gardens and whatnot. And it's usually way, way, way too expensive. So in the past decade or so, the party has gone from the grounds into the downtown area, where bars and other places are bringing in better musical acts than are at the Stampede. So their tents are bulging full, and it's like I said, it's just at the end of the shows at the old time at 2 a.m. Thousands of people would be on the streets of downtown Calgary, and it just became a huge mess. So police are going to be there in force. So better watch your alcohol intake, kids.
So what's the final call on is it no noise past midnight? Is that what it was during the weekdays?
Yeah, they were shutting it off, I think, around 11:30 during the weekdays, and then they were letting them play a little bit later on weekends.
On the weekends. And what's the decimal level now?
Oh, something between 747 and, I'm not sure the exact decibel limit, but I do feel sorry for the people in the area, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if you're a single mother and you've just got your baby down to sleep, and then you've got
but it's also Stampede, and they know that that's the time of year that happens.
It is, and people say, Jeanette, you don't complain about the airport music if you buy a house near the airport. For these people, the Cowboys tent was not there. It only moved in there in the last couple of years.
Okay.
It was down close to the Stampede.
I feel
so.
bad for the artists that are canceled this weekend at Country Thunder. I mean, Lainey Wilson was supposed to be here.
I know some big names.
Really
some big names that
yeah.
I'm
and
sure
some
they're getting.
Some other local artists that were this was going to be their first main stage. So I feel terrible
it's
for
terrible
them as well.
Terrible.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're out of time. We didn't get the chance to talk about FIFA World Cup soccer next week.
All right, go Canada, go.
Yeah, exactly. Western Standard Chief Editor Dave Naylor, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Jeanette.